Welcome to Sacred Stories Podcast, a place to explore and discuss new and exciting books of consciousness. I am your host, Reverend Patricia Caginello, and speaking with authors that have shared their wisdom, their stories, and a higher consciousness through their books is one of my favorite things to do. Today we are speaking with Miguel Dean, author of the brand new book, Bring Him Home, a twin flame love story. His true story of meeting an extraordinary woman, one he considers his twin flame, and their sacred union and how this tumultuous relationship helped him heal his wounds of the past. As well as deep nourishment for the heart, this book offers rich material for the mind as the themes of the twin flames of the divine feminine and sacred masculine, sacred sexuality, and kundalini energy are woven delicately within this compelling story. So I'm so pleased to say welcome Miguel Dean to Sacred Stories.
Hello, Patricia. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Absolutely. And I just want to say that I'm just so thrilled because Sacred Stories Publishing is the publisher of Bring Him Home, a twin flame love story. And we're very excited about it. It actually launches June 21st. And it's in pre-order now. So congratulations, Miguel, on the writing of this beautiful story.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting times. Yeah, especially as we move towards the 21st of June, the summer solstice and the launch. Yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the reasons that we at Sacred Stories was so interested in this book, besides that it is just a beautiful love story, is that it really speaks from the masculine, the male perspective, right? I mean, that's unusual sometimes in love stories. Many times love stories are told by the female. And so this makes your book even more unique in that sense.
Yeah. It felt, I mean, a lot of my work, is about the fact that, that we all have sort of feminine and masculine within us. And I think it's part of my journey has been very much to, the journey from the head to the heart. And so the loving aspect and I felt it was really important that I wanted to share, what love feels like, what the challenges and the ups and downs of love can feel like for a man, for a, dare I say, a conscious man.
Right. So let's learn a little bit more about you. Share with our listeners your sacred story that led you to be inspired to write your story, write your book.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, the key first part of my sacred story really was the death of my mother when I was 7 months old. And then I was raised by a stepmother who really struggled to cope with being a mother of 4 children that weren't her own, and then her own son as well, and my father who was sort of out at work all the time. So she really struggled and became quite violent and abusive. So that I didn't have a smooth start to life, shall we say, and there wasn't a lot of love about, and there wasn't a lot of the sort of soft, loving feminine energy. At the same time, I'm aware that there was probably there for the first 7 months of my life, but then it was suddenly taken away when my mother died. So it seemed that a lot of the rest of my life I was kind of programmed to go in search of that love, to go in search of that which I'd tasted for such a short period of time, but I hadn't been topped up with it, as I was growing up as a child, as a boy, and as a young man. So that start to life, I mean, it also led to me having very low self-esteem and low self-worth, and I got myself in quite a muddle when I left home and got involved in drugs and crime and was homeless for quite a while. And found myself in some really dark places and was always trying to find my way to complete myself, if you like, to find some sort of peace through my relationships with women. But my relationships with women were always really mirroring the wound that I was carrying, the mother wound that I was carrying from my childhood. Mm-hmm. So, eventually when I, arrived at this place at the beginning of Bring Him Home, I had just reached a place where I decided I need to put this, I need to heal this wound once and for all. It's time, it's time for something different. I am so ready to do the work. Not that I hadn't been avoiding the work, but I was so ready to really do the work, and and find some peace and some wholeness and some completion for myself.
Miguel, thank you for sharing that. As you were talking, what was really, evident or coming up for me was kind of, that larger sacred story that we all walk. And a lot of times when we meet some people or people at different points in our life, or even ourselves, we sometimes seem to look at things in a fishbowl, and we see the person for who they are at that moment in time. But having that larger, that's why I love people to share their sacred stories, having that larger kind of look into maybe the truth of a person, or the real, a little bit more of maybe their experiences that have shaped them, I think, is such a beautiful process, and really helps maybe all of us move into a place of compassion and understanding with each other.
Yeah, I guess it puts things into context, really, doesn't it? Because my experience is that everything is connected. Everything's connected, and I guess that was a big part. That's been a big part of my sacred story, is realizing what I call the gifts in adversity. That the challenges that I faced were all, I choose to see them, that they were to bring me. They were kind of signposts, and they were, the sort of hero's journey thing, isn't it? The obstacles, the challenges that you have to overcome in order to realize the full potential and to create the best version of yourself that's possible.
So your story, Bring Him Home, a twin flame love story, is your true story, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, it is a true story, yes.
So you mentioned that this, through this relationship with this woman, that you really wanted to be different and kind of heal the wounds of the past. Tell us a little bit more about your book, Bring Him Home, a twin flame love story.
So the story begins with a chance encounter, an author fair that I was at, and my twin flame appeared in front of me, and we had a very short conversation, and there was this very strong energetic kind of pull, and I just noticed her as soon as she came in the room, and then she disappeared. That it was a very short, 10 minutes maybe that we spent together, and I was just coming to the end of a relationship, so I wasn't available, and I later found out that she was aware of that. Then we met again about 9 months later. We met 9 months later, a very synchronicitous meeting, and again, as soon as I saw her, I didn't remember the first meeting, but there was just this really strong attraction, and very quickly we fell into a very powerful and strong love affair. We would see each other regularly, and we would spend weekends together and spend time walking in the hills, and doing things together that we both loved. But as they say, the honeymoon period came to an end quite quickly, and it became very apparent, which I think is the twin flame aspect, is that we're both very sort of catalytic, and together we just created this really powerful catalyst of the power of conscious relationships to sort of bring up old wounds and to clear stuff. And so, in our time together, weekends away, holidays, we just went through this real roller coaster, really, of beautiful passion and connection and oneness, and other times, severe sort of trauma release and pain and purging and purification. And there was this kind of dance of her leaving me or me leaving her, and fear and love all woven together. So it was beautiful, and it was painful in equal measure, at different times of our dance, dance of the of man and woman.
So, so in full disclosure, this is the first book that Sacred Stories Publishing is publishing that has, I'll just say sex scenes in them, right? And I had to pause when the manuscript came to us because typically that's not something we would normally publish. But seeing how honoring and important, so the union, the sacred union, the kundalini energy, as you say, the sacred sexuality that is woven throughout your story and that you share is such a beautiful and integral part of the relationship that, we're excited to share that because for me as a woman, it also shows such an honoring and reverence for the female from the male. And the passion of the connection. So speak a little bit about that, about why you felt it was important to write those personal, sexual encounters that you shared.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah. I think the biggest reason why I wanted to share that was because I wanted to share essentially the beauty and sacredness of sexual union. That it is, I guess for me, it's one of the most incredible gifts of being, of taking human form, of being in bodies. And if you like, making love, that sacred sexuality is, I guess for me, is, it's a bit like being at church. It's a holy thing. It's such an intimate, beautiful experience that to arise from a place of reverence and honoring. It's just it's a profound experience, and it kind of it's an expression, I guess for me, it's an expression of love and joy and the ultimate dance of man and woman, and I think that's missing. Sex is often a taboo subject in our society. It's something that's not talked about, or it's almost like a bit shameful or a bit dirty or a bit, and I don't feel that it should be like that. I think it's something that's very sacred and very beautiful, and because it's a bit taboo and not talked about, there's not a great deal of positive guidance, if you like, of how powerful and how beautiful and how sacred it can actually be.
No, absolutely. And that's why I'm so excited for this book to kind of get out in the world, to tell the different story of how a man and a woman or two people can come together, in sacred sexual union and the power of that and the beauty of that. So thank you for writing, the story, for telling it in a different way than maybe mainstream consciousness has heard.
Thank you. Yeah, there was certainly I did have to push through sometimes the voice in my head saying, who do you think you are, and is this really okay, and but I just pushed through that, and it was like, no, it was one of those things of, I can't not do this. This needs to be part of it. And I need to write it.
Yeah, I think there's a very large collective wound around the sexual acts because of the abuse, right? That on so many levels, emotional and physical and mental, that have been wrapped around the union of two people. That the wound is deep. And it's important. I think your book will help the healing of that larger collective sexual wound. I believe we all hold.
Yeah, thank you. And that is my intention. That's certainly a big part of the intention behind the book. Yeah, to plant seeds. And I didn't want it to be too new agey and too alternative and too just open to a sort of, more spiritual sort of market. I wanted it to be accessible to everybody, just to maybe sow some little seeds and ideas of, oh wow, maybe we can do things differently. Maybe there is a different way, and the general guidance and information around sex and so on. I wanted it to be able to reach a wider audience and just to raise some questions for people and plant some seeds.
Mm-hmm. So what is your favorite part of the book? What's a scene or a general, thought that happens in the book that's your very favorite?
I can't remember. There's a piece, the bit that generally was the bit that was the best for me writing was as it was kind of coming together towards the end, and there were some elements of, because I don't want to share too much about the end at all, but there was just this shift within me where there was a lot less fear in me, and there was a lot more love and a lot more peace, and I was just so much more at peace in myself as a result of the journey that we traveled together. And there were just increasing moments of transcendence, and just really feeling very much alive for the first time. So writing those bits, because obviously I kind of like experienced them, but then writing them almost like takes it into a deeper place and a deeper sense of gratitude for for what the relationship brought, for the gifts that it brought for me.
Mm. I probably should have asked this question first, so we move into the positive. But what was the most difficult part for you to write because it is a very personal story?
That's probably an easier question to answer in a way, Patricia, because there were more difficult parts than there were. But because, what I noticed was that as I was writing it, because there were times when we were together and there were times when we weren't, obviously whenever I was writing the book, we weren't together. And so when I was writing, if I was writing about a beautiful, passionate lovemaking, then I missed her, and that was really difficult. And at other times when I was writing about, the purging and the release of pain and the fear and so on that was going on, and that was difficult as well. So it felt a bit, as if I was caught between a rock and a hard place. If I was writing about the beautiful bits, I missed it. And if I was writing about the difficult bits, it was kind of like I had to relive them again to be able to write them clearly and feel, re-feel the emotion of what happened, while at the same time being very aware that it was so cathartic and that I was writing it out and freeing myself of any remnants of the pain that I'd experienced during the journey.
Miguel, it takes a real level of personal power, I think, to be able to sit in that, the mess, as people say, to be able to sit, to be so uncomfortable, and to move through the uncomfortableness. And yes, this of course would be personally cathartic for you, but I know that you also, want it to be something that you were writing to share with others, to help others. And so I just, just an acknowledgement of really the courage and that personal power within that allowed you to go through this process. I think is important to say.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe that vulnerability is a superpower, and again, I guess it's sort of woven into not how I wrote the book or why I wrote the book was is that we have this shame and guilt about sharing the messy bits, and it's like we just want to hear the polished ending and we just want to see the nice bits, when actually when we share our vulnerability and our struggles and our mistakes and the times when we've fallen flat on our face, then it gives others permission to be in that place as well, because the truth is we're all that's what it is to be human, isn't it? And I think it just helps. My intention is that it just helps give a little bit of a collective sigh of, oh, it's not just me. Somebody else has found relationships tricky as well.
Well, some early reviews are coming in, and the reviews are incredibly positive. But the thread is also that he's writing my story. This is my relationship, or this is this is what I dealt with or struggled with. Whether it's the not necessarily maybe the physical story, but the emotional roller coaster and the healing that people have experienced or are trying to experience.
Yeah. We're all living. Increasingly, the older I get, the more I just know so clearly that we're all living different versions of the same story, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what makes books like Bring Him Home, A Twin Flame Love Story, I think, such an important work, especially for our time when people are really beginning to open up to the larger, to healing the larger wounds. I think this is a very important book. So we touched on this a little bit, but overall, what do you really hope readers will receive, when they pick up the book and they start reading? What do you hope is the gift in it for them?
Yeah, I would like there to be, as you just mentioned, hope. Hope, because I think so many of us struggle with relationships. I don't think we're given the best guidance, from Hollywood, from the mainstream media and so on. Actually, the intricacies and the how complex relationships can be. So I hope that even if things are difficult, that there can be learning and growth, and the success of a relationship isn't necessarily about living happily ever after. It's about how much you grow and how much you heal each other, and how much the experiences and the depth of the journey. So hope is really important. And as you mentioned, I think we've touched on this. I would like, in an age where we hear so much about how young people and pornography and so on is such a big factor in how people learn about sex. I would just like it to be just one little thing about, well, perhaps this is a different way of understanding and coming to that place of of being intimately with another human being. It's just another just to consider it from this place, and of course that remembering that relationships they're often called the highest form of yoga. For me, the purpose of relationship is for us to grow. It is for us to grow, and that when we grow together and we go through challenging times together, that's when the depth, of the relationship, so it kind of grows roots, doesn't it, and becomes powerful and beautiful as well.
Absolutely. It is a journey, we're all taking together for sure. Miguel Dean, please tell our audience how they can find out more about you, your website and social media.
Yes, my website, quite simply, is migueldean.net. And there's lots of information there about my work and who I am and what I'm up to. And the other best form of social media is Facebook. You can find me at Miguel Dean Sacred Masculine. Those are the social media that I use, and you'll find me on Instagram as well, at Miguel Dean Author. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Miguel, for being with us today and for sharing, your story, your personal story, and for sharing more about your new book, Bring Him Home, A Twin Flame Love Story. I encourage our listeners to absolutely pick this up for themselves, for someone that they love. It really is a beautiful story and a passionate story, and it's all of everything we talked about. So Bring Him Home, A Twin Flame Love Story is available now. And I want to thank our listeners for being with us today. You've been listening to Sacred Stories. I am your host, Reverend Patricia Caginello, and I wish you all a good day.